Okay, I think we're going to make a start. I've unmuted myself, so I think you all should be able to hear me now. Can I get a quick thumbs up just to make sure everyone can hear me? Lovely, thank you, that's great. Thank you all for joining me again. I say again, this is my third webinar, and I'll be recording this one like I did the others, so you'll be able to, if you do have to shoot off early, you'll be able to watch it back. I'll send you all the link this evening or sometime tomorrow. I'll try and keep it as to the point as I can, because I appreciate some of you are a little bit tight for time, which is fine. I won't rush through it though. I'll make sure I put everything across I can. Like I say, if you do need to disappear, I won't take it personally if I start seeing you all disappear off my screen. So, as you know, you would have seen by my emails or from conversations, I'm adding custom fitting to my services at Black Nest, or to my coaching business. And really the decision came was a couple of reasons, really. One, the pro shop there don't really have the staff with the knowledge, because I'm the only professional on site, to be able to sell products with any great, certainly sell golf clubs with any great knowledge. And the other reason is I think I'd be able to help my students with giving them the right equipment. I have always had custom fitting in the back of my mind, but because I've never been in a position to really take it on myself, I juggled it before in a couple of head professional roles. It was never really a big enough part of what I did, but now I've got a couple of brand partners that are involved, very supportive. Comes with some investment for me, of course. I've got to get things set up, but I've got a pretty loyal base, and I think that if golfers are going to go and buy golf clubs, particularly if they're having lessons with me and we've got that relationship, I would expect that they might want to buy through me. For one, it's a natural thing to support, I guess, certain people, and two, the knowledge. There's an absolute advantage of getting your clubs fitted with somebody that knows your golf swing versus somebody who's selling you golf clubs as a retail sale, ultimately. Because if you go to American Golf, if you buy online, I mean, you can't get fitted online, but if you go to American Golf, or other places where it's very retail driven, you're going to get a retail sale, not necessarily a performance sale. I don't need to sell golf clubs to make a living. I'm adding it as part of my services to genuinely help my players. The profit margins, believe me, aren't that amazing. So I'm not trying to sell golf clubs to everybody that walks through the door, but I genuinely think if there's an opportunity there where the right equipment can help you, and hopefully by the end of today you'll see that it can, then I want to be able to offer that service. So I'm just checking you guys. I'm hoping you all can see my screen with the custom fitting on. Can I just get another thumbs up because I'm sharing it? I just want to make sure. Yeah, perfect. Okay, great. So what is custom fitting? I've put together myself kind of a few phrases that just straight out of my head onto paper, really, as to what comes into my head when I first think of custom fitting. And for me, custom fitting, the process of matching the correct golf club and specification to the golfer, taking into consideration the golfer's static measurements and swing characteristics to provide the golfer with a performance enhancing club or set of clubs. The fitting will focus on around the golfer's needs. So whether you need more distance, more or less height, whether you need more accuracy, more or less spin, whatever it is particularly for you in your game, that's what the fitting will always focus around. If you want to be more accurate, I'm not going to give you a club that's going to help you hit it 40 yards further, because that's not going to be giving you actually what it is you need. The process of custom fitting also ensures the yardage gaps between clubs are even and that you are carrying the correct clubs in your bag to suit your swing and game. So not every golfer needs 14 clubs. In fact, most golfers don't need 14 clubs. So that's quite important when it comes to custom fitting. It's not just about the right heads and the right shafts. It's very much about the set makeup. I can see myself selling sets of golf clubs with 8 or 9 clubs because certain golfers can't generate the correct speed, perhaps, to notice the difference between a 6 and a 7 iron. So again, this is where it comes down to a performance thing for me versus selling a set of golf clubs. It's about getting it right for the golfer, ultimately. So what can custom fitting do for a golfer? So these are the different kind of things that a custom fit will help you with. Increase club head speed, which is a big one, which will equal distance, height, and spin. So increase your distance, increase your height, and increase the spin of the ball. You'll hear me talk about the spin quite a lot because that is really important when it comes to improving our shots. Increase ball speed, the ball speed coming off of the club face. Ultimately, that is very much about distance. Increase the spin of your ball. That will give you more height, more distance, the correct trajectory of flight, and more control when the ball lands. Decrease spin if you need it. Some golfers are going to spin the ball too much. I'm sure many of you think, well, I don't create that much backspin. My ball never stops on the green when I'm approaching it. It always flies off. But that's not necessarily what we're talking about. I'm talking about the backspin that you create with an iron or with a wood to get the correct flight on the shot, to get it airborne in the first place, for example. But then to decrease that if you're getting too much. If your ball's spinning an awful lot, you'll see it really rise up in the air. So we can control that with club fitting as well. Improve contact. I mean, contact is key when it comes to good golf. If you're not hitting it from the middle of the club, forget everything else. So that's why it has an effect on distance, height, trajectory, accuracy, control, everything. Solid contact. If you have a lesson with me, I always talk about if we hit it from the middle, that's the most important thing to begin with. And then we'll figure out how we can straighten you out. But if you're not hitting it from the middle, that's the bit we need to get first. Correct horizontal launch angle. Sounds a bit technical now, but basically that's whether your ball starts to the left or starts to the right. It's the angle in which it launches off, okay? And increase MOI. MOI is moment of inertia. And basically what that means is when a golf ball hits a golf club, if you have an off-center hit, your club will twist. And the weights on the back of a golf club, particularly drivers, I mean, this is my club, so it doesn't have an awful lot of cavity in there. I'll talk to you about that a bit later. The weights, particularly in a driver, where the weight is situated in the head, if you hit from the toe or if you hit from the heel, then that will really make a difference to how your face twists and obviously where your ball goes. So the correct clubs for you can help to create more stability in your club face so that if the ball does fly a little bit offline, it might only be a little bit versus a lot, particularly when we're talking about drivers. That's a really important one there, which I'll talk a little bit about later on. Very much how modern clubs now, you'll see, have got different weights in the head. Really big differences in direction for shots of drivers. So one of the things I wanted to talk about actually was, and I just added this in here because I had a question come a bit late today and I thought I'll add this in here because we get to talking about standard. So when you buy them off the shelf, they're standard. Standard doesn't exist. Standard may well have existed in the 70s, I suppose. Every manufacturer made their 7-iron the same loft. They probably used the same, there were probably 2 or 3 shafts available at that time, and they all did them at the same length. As technology's moved on and our knowledge of golf clubs has moved on, there's no such thing as standard. And I thought this is a really interesting table to show you. It's difficult to see, but I'll talk you through it. It's very small. So this is a table that shows the lofts, which are the blue dots, and the length, which is the red dots. Okay, now you'll see, I'll explain to you, the numbers on the left relative to the blue dots, that's talking about the loft of the club, okay? And relative to the red dots, that's talking about the length in inches. So for example, to make it really simple, the first name on there is a Bridgestone JGR iron. These are all 7-irons, industry 7-irons of all different brands. Bridgestone JGR iron is 26 degrees and it's 38 inches long. Now, you can see, you've only got to follow the graph up to see what difference there is. If we go to the other end of the scale, Wilson FG Tour 100 iron is...
Adam, sorry to interrupt you. It's Dave here. I can't see any table on my screen. Am I meant to, am I missing something?
Can everyone else see it? Yeah.
No, it's just me.
Can you not see my screen, Dave?
I can just see you talking, that's all. Is there another thing I need to select, do you think? Or...
How are you watching?
I'm on Zoom.
On your laptop, or are you on an app?
I'm on an iPad.
Oh, right.
Maybe there's something.
I'm on an iPad.
Across.
I can see it.
Yeah, Dan, you're on an iPad. Is there anything you had to do, or?
No, literally. Maybe no. It literally just comes up on the screen, just as is. Maybe try and minimize his. Is there a plus and a minus on Adam's face on the screen?
No, you guys, you carry on, and I'll live with it. It's,
okay.
Like I was saying, I'll fiddle around with something. You carry on.
No problem. I'm recording this, so you can go back and have a little look. It's just this. Had you been able to see all the other slides? Okay, Dave.
No, I'm obviously a bit thick because I haven't seen any slides now. I've just watched you talking, but you carry on. Don't worry, you're going to hold everyone up. You carry on.
You'll be able to see it when I send you the link.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So if we go to the other end of the table, we've got Wilson FG Tour 100, and the loft of that is 35 degrees, and the length is kind of 37 and a half. So we've got 9 degrees of loft different of the same golf club. They're both 7-irons. So usually we have a 7, 8, 9, as the clubs change, we have 4 degrees between each club generally. And a standard, industry standard 7-iron used to be between 34 and 36 degrees. Manufacturers vary slightly. Nowadays, you can see that there is a huge range in lofts of clubs. So you buy an off-the-shelf set of clubs you like the look of, your 7-iron you buy, all of a sudden, is probably the same as the 5-iron that you were currently using. Could well be. So we can get ourselves into a bit of a muddle when all of a sudden we're hitting clubs far too long or far too short, or we have clubs in our bag we can no longer use anymore. For example, the Bridgestone 5-iron, I'd hate to think what that loft is, because that would be like a 2-iron. You would most golfers wouldn't be able to get that thing in the air. So standard doesn't exist anymore. If you buy a set of clubs off the shelf, then you are just going to be lucky if they work for you. Now, of course, they do vary. If you buy a set of clubs off the shelf, not to say you can't go and play good golf. You can, of course you can. You can play good golf, and you might be fine with them. But you also won't be playing to your absolute potential because you won't have the tools that are correct for you. So I just thought this was a really good comparison table for you to see. You can see also that the lengths really vary as well. So, you could be 1.5 inches shorter or longer with some of these clubs, and that's a huge amount out. So really interesting stuff there, I thought. Who is standard? No one. There we go. So the fitting procedure. So during a custom fitting session, the following procedure is followed. So player assessment. I'm going to want to know as much information about the golfer as possible. It's really important to understand their ability, what they're wanting to get out of the game, how long they've been playing, kind of all that kind of stuff is really important for me to know when I'm giving you a set of clubs that are going to work for you. I want to see what your current clubs are like, because let's compare them. Let's see what your 7-iron loft is, and let's answer some questions as to perhaps why that isn't going as high or too high, or maybe why you can't hit your 4-iron or your 3-iron or whatever it might be. That will be able to answer some questions for you where the holes are in your game, and just give you a little bit more of an understanding of what we're trying to achieve as we go forward into the actual fitting. Static measurements, so we'll take some measurements. Typically the ones that I'll look at is a wrist to floor measurement. So that will give us a rough understanding, your wrist crease to floor when you're standing up, a rough starting point for how long you're, we should start you with a 5-iron or a 7-iron. I've got a chart that we work to, I'll show you on that a bit later. It is only a starting point, and with some people I'll measure them and some people I won't. Some people I'll let them see the length of the club during their hit, and I'll make a decision based on whether I think they should be longer or shorter. Others, if you're particularly not tall or short, that being tall or short has nothing to do with the length of clubs, by the way, you should use, because you could be really tall, you could be 6'4", but if you've got really, really long arms, if your arms are close to the ground, you need shorter clubs. Or you could be really, really short, and if you've got really, really short arms, your wrist to floor measurement could be higher, you'd need longer clubs. So it's very much about that measurement to start with, and then also the dynamic process of when you hit golf balls. So the dynamic fitting is then we're going to look at everything else, the shafts, we're going to look at the ball flight, we're going to look at all the different numbers and variations. Things that you'll do in your swing, perhaps, the loft of the club, the lie of the club. And that's really the main part of the fitting, is trying out different shafts and head combinations to see which ones work best for you. That's it in a nutshell with the dynamic fitting. And then finally, the set makeup. Do you want 14 clubs in your bag, or 13 clubs and then your putter? And are you working for every single one of those? Or do you not need all that many clubs? You just need the right number of clubs for you. Perhaps you need every other iron in the bag if your swing speed isn't that fast. Perhaps you need hybrids, more hybrids in your bag, so rather than long irons. Maybe you like to use a long iron off the fairway, so we would look at that instead of a 3-wood maybe, or a hybrid. So the set makeup is very individual to you, very individual to your ability to play the game, I guess. So better players will tend to have longer irons in their bag. Club golfers, average golfers, now hybrids are really popular. I use a hybrid and I love it. The longest iron I carry is a 4-iron. So it really is very much an individual thing there with the set makeup. Wedges as well, very important when we get down the other end of the bag. I'll touch on that again later on. The coaching fitting relationship was something that, one of the reasons why I thought that this would be a good thing for me to add to what I do. I feel confident I could fit someone for a set of golf clubs without taking any measurements, based on knowing their ball flight, knowing their swing, knowing where I want that player to be in 6 months or a year's time, understanding the player's faults. So I'm pretty confident I could look at a golfer and know that I would need to create more spin for them or less spin. Therefore, I'll give them a certain shaft and I would avoid other shafts. Not something that I would need to look at tons of numbers on a launch monitor to try and figure out. So I do feel I'm slightly at an advantage to guys that don't have the coaching experience, but just come on as a fitter. In American golf, you get a lot of the guys, or wherever, you get a lot of guys that are fitters, and they do a fitting course and they learn a bit about all the different shafts and things, and they learn all the numbers, but you don't get to see the ball flight and you don't get to know that much about the player. So that's where I feel that I've probably got a slight advantage to be able to fit someone with the correct equipment. So the fitting tools, this machine here is the flight scope. If you've been in my studio, you'd have seen this. Now this is going to give us some invaluable data, and I'm going to talk you through all the parameters really quickly. And it's going to tell you all the information that we get. Now, please don't feel that you have to understand every single one of these, but there'll be certain ones that are really important. I might even skip over a couple just to save time, because there's quite a few of them. And it's just a great tool to back up what it is I do see with my eyes and what I hear, and what the ball flight looks to be doing. So I'll talk to you a little bit about this. Some of you might have more experience with launch monitors than others. So the ball speed is a really important one for us. Ultimately, that's telling us what speed the ball is coming off the club face at. That's going to be really important for the distance the ball flies. The vertical launch angle, is the ball coming off the club face high or low? Really simple. Is it coming up really high like this, or is it coming really low? That'll have a lot to do with your golf swing, and that would have a lot to do with the spin that you create on the golf ball. The horizontal launch angle, I spoke about that. Does your ball start to the right, or does it start to the left when you hit? And all this information comes off that launch monitor. You only need to hit, well, you hit one ball, it gives you a number for all the different things you've done. Vertical descent angle, how is your ball landing? Is your ball landing flat like this? With a driver, we'd want it to come in and land relatively flat because we want it to roll. With a wedge, we want it coming in steep because we want it to stop. So that gives us an idea of the clubs you're using. Is your ball getting the right height and the right angle down? Many of these relate to each other. Smash factor is one where we talk about the energy transfer. So if you hit from the middle of the club face, you're going to get the most energy transfer. It's the same in any sport where you're using a bat and ball or racket. You hit from the middle, you're going to get the maximum energy transfer. You'll see a certain number, but effectively what we're looking for is for the ball to come off the club face at about 1.5 times the speed that the club is swinging. So for example, if I swing a driver at 100 miles an hour, my ball speed, if I hit correctly, should be 150 miles an hour. Okay, now that decreases as we go down down the clubs. So as I get into a pitching wedge, that 1.5 number isn't quite the same. It goes down to about 1.4 or so. So you're going to lose less ultimately because of the loft. This is probably the most important one now, spin rate. How much is your ball spinning? If your ball spins too much, it's going to go very high and it's not going to go particularly very far because it's going to be very resistant in the air. If your ball doesn't spin enough, you won't hit it high enough, and you also won't hit it far enough. So the spin, too much or too little, can really make a difference on your distance. And this isn't about whether we're using a wedge trying to spin it and stop it on the greens. This is about drivers as well. Every ball you hit, by the way, is spinning backwards. So just to, some golfers say, oh, I don't ever get any backspin. Every golfer gets backspin. You get backspin on your golf ball. The ball is only spinning backwards, but it will spin at a slightly tilted angle backwards. Think about an aeroplane. When you slice a golf ball, the ball's spinning backwards. If an aeroplane tilts its wings this way, all of a sudden you start to curve over here. The spin is backwards, but you've just tilted the axis in which you're spinning on. Okay, so backspin is always there. There's the spin axis at the top. I just explained that one. It tells us our carry distance. It tells us our roll distance. It tells us our total distance. It tells us our lateral landing. So basically, how far did I miss the target? And all of these are good for consistency. So when we're hitting our clubs and we can compare our clubs versus our new clubs, well, are these new ones going any further? Is the driver landing and rolling further because of the angle of descent? What's my dispersion like? So the lateral landing, is it landing closer to the target line more consistently, or is it further away? So these are the things that a launch monitor really gives you that you can't see with your eyes. Apex height, the maximum height your ball reaches before it comes down. Again, very important. If it's not getting high enough, then it can't stay in the air long enough to get full distance. If it goes too high, it's going to stall and it's going to not get far enough. How long does it spend in the air, flight time, and then shot dispersion. This one here, this was one I was talking about here, really good one. If we can see a nice neat grouping of golf balls together versus a wide grouping of golf balls, then which club should I be using? It really helps you if you can compare 2 7-irons, and one of them had a really tight dispersion, and one of them had a really wide dispersion. I know which one I'd want to buy or want to use. And this may well be, and I'm expecting some fitting sessions where golfers don't hit the new stuff particularly better straight away. So I'm not expecting every new club to outperform someone's current club. That's not always going to be the way. It likely will be if we give you the right shaft and you weren't already using the right shaft, or we give you the right head and you weren't already using the correct head for you. But you might be getting the most out of your golf clubs. You might be getting the most out of your swing, and clubs might not affect. And if they don't, you'll see the information at the same time as me. So there's no pulling the wool over anyone's eyes with this stuff. It's straight as you see it. If your current clubs outperform the new ones, then you don't buy any new ones. It's quite simple. So club data. Club speed, this is a really important one. Club speed is really, really important because that will increase or it will control the spin on the ball. The faster you swing the club, the more spin you create, therefore the higher you can hit a ball. So if you're a senior golfer or a lady golfer or a junior golfer, and I highlight those areas because normally they're the categories that have slower swing speeds, you need club head speed. Therefore, you're likely going to need a light shaft. You're likely going to need a weight at the bottom of your golf club, for example, at the bottom of the head. 1 mile an hour extra will gain 3 yards on average. And I'm pretty certain that there's golfers out there that I could gain 10 miles an hour, so 30 yards, on a 5-iron. Quite straightforward, certainly on a driver, because you can gain 10 miles an hour by having the right shaft if you're really using the wrong equipment. So club speed is vital. I'm going to skip the club speed profile and the acceleration profile because you need a PhD to understand that stuff. Some of you might have PhDs, actually. I should have I'm just assuming wrongly there. Face angle, club face open or closed. Face to path, again, this is stuff that's probably not as relevant. This is more going to be about how your ball curves in the air. And dynamic loft is one that will be important for you. If you've got a steep golf swing and you chop down on the ball and you've got a lofted club in your hand, your dynamic loft is going to be quite high. If you've got a shallow golf swing and you're coming in like this, your dynamic loft is going to be quite low. So this is where custom fitting starts to come into its own. If you're not looking and you're not interested in changing your golf swing, that's how golf clubs can help you straight away without you changing your golf swing. Just a few more to go through. Angle of attack. Are we hitting up on the ball? Are we hitting down on the ball? Club path is the direction that your club is traveling through the ball. Is it going out to the right or is it coming across to the left? And spin loft, similar thing as I was saying before. If I'm hitting down on the ball with a lofted club, that will affect the spin an awful lot and the loft, and it will really take the ball high up in the air. So we can control that with the right golf club in your hands. There we go. I'm going to skip past those ones. Okay. So the fitting procedure. So you're coming for your fitting. What are we actually going to do? What are we going to look for? We're going to look at the lie angle. I'm going to go through all of these. We're going to look at the lie angle of the club. We're going to look at the loft. We're going to look at the length. We're going to look at the head design. We're going to look at the shaft. We're going to look at your wedges, your grips, and your set makeup. That ultimately is what we're doing in a fitting. Now, all of these on here will have a standard manufacturer's configuration, I suppose. And like I showed you on the graph, they can be all over the place. So how do we know it fits to you? Well, we don't until we test it. So the loft angle, really straightforward. Most of you will already know this. The loft is this angle on the club face here. It's going to determine how much your ball spins. It's going to determine how high your ball flies. Now we can adjust that. I've actually got a loft and lie machine in my studio now, and I can put this in here and I can give you more loft or I can give you less loft by, believe it or not, using a loft and lie machine bending bar and literally bending your golf club. Sounds wrong, but it's how it's done if you went to a tour truck on tour and Tiger Woods went in and he said, I'm hitting my 7-iron too high today, they'd stick it in a fancy vise and they'd bend it and then give it back to him, and that's it. It's honestly as simple as that. Depending on the clubs you've got, these are forged. They're a very, very soft metal, so they're very easily movable. So we're talking about 1 or 2 degrees at a time. And that'll be the same for the lie angle. The lie angle is this angle here, how it sits on the ground. So if your clubs are too upright for you, so the length of the club can affect this, but if your clubs are too upright, your ball will tend to fly to the left. If your clubs are too flat, your ball will tend to fly to the right because of the loft of the golf club. So as soon as I tilt the club this way with a lofted club, the face now points off to the left. Here it points straight, and as I go that way, it points to the right. So if you've ever had your loft and lies measured, you'll understand what it means to have your clubs 1 or 2 degrees upright or 1 or 2 degrees flat, and that will depend on your golf swing, how you deliver the club to the ball. You might deliver the club like this, with the toe down. You might deliver the club with the heel down. And if you weren't looking to change your golf swing, we would adjust your clubs so that instead of presenting it like this to the ball, you present it like this, purely by changing this angle. Again, it's just bent perfectly how it's done. I would always keep an eye on the golfer that I'm working with, because I know that some golfers will return the club wrong because of their swing. So I'll probably advise those that I'm teaching, we'll keep your lie angle at this, because in a few months' time, it's going to change when we're working on your swing. So let's not change it now and then change it again. You don't want to really do that. Reassess 6 months down the line. If we need to change it, then we can do. It's not something that's out of the question. But really one that's, we can do that to your current golf clubs without, you don't need to buy new golf clubs. You can get those that actually adjusted. The length is simple. Length of the shaft, that's very obvious. And I spoke before about wrist to floor measurement. If you are, so here we can see the wrist to floor. And it gives us a rough idea of the length our driver should be and the length our 5-iron should be. So if your wrist to floor measurement is between 27 and 29 inches, you should have a start with a 42-inch driver, and you should start with the 36.5 5-iron. And we would bear that in mind during the fitting. Now, I haven't got lots of clubs at all those different lengths, but I would have you grip down the club slightly if we needed it shorter, and we would just have a play around with the length. I actually think the length of the club is a bit more of a dynamic change. That's something that I would look at whilst the player is hitting the ball. Something I'd look at as they grip the club. I get a lot of people that come to me and they're gripping their clubs like this. And where's the end of the club? Well, it's halfway up their hand. Okay. They're probably going to want longer golf clubs because they're just not comfortable gripping it down here for whatever reason. Part of custom fitting is comfort as well, by the way. Other golfers might be gripping it way down here. I'm not going to fit them with longer golf clubs. I might ask them to move their hands up the club if I think it's a technical thing they need to do. But if they're actually holding it down here because their clubs are too long for them off the shelf, then we're going to make sure they're the right length when we order them a new set, or we cut the shafts down, which I don't really like doing because it messes with the flex of the shaft. But again, I can talk a bit about that later on. So that's length. I mean, that's quite a straightforward one. So head design, I've put up some, not trying to plug anything, of course, but here, these are the new Cobra clubs. Head designs. So low center of gravity cavity iron. So let's talk about central of gravity or the low weight. The more weight I've got at the bottom of a golf club, the higher the ball's going to go. Okay, you can see my clubs here. They don't have, they're sort of blades. They don't have an awful huge cavity. They're a very small cavity. They haven't got lots of weight at the bottom and none at the top. They're actually kind of peripheral rated, so they've actually got a bit of weight around the top as well, just to help keep the ball flight down a little bit for me. So yes, if you've got a lot of weight at the bottom, that's going to help you get the ball in the air. The amount of golfers I see that use old golf clubs that are blades from the 70s or 80s, where there is no very small little weight difference between the top and the bottom of the club, and don't hit the ball very far, well, there's not enough weight at the bottom to create the height, to create the distance. So modern golf clubs have come into their own with the different weighting in the heads. The cavity back, you'll see there again, that's for a golfer that maybe doesn't need to get the ball particularly high, kind of a mid trajectory player, someone who doesn't struggle that much with creating spin. And then a blade, the ones at the bottom here where there's absolutely no cavity. That'll be a you know, a professional player, scratch player, or certainly a low single figure player who creates enough speed in their swing to create enough spin to get the ball high enough. So basically they don't need help. They're reverting back to the 80s and 70s with that design, because they don't need clubs that are designed to help them anymore. Therefore, they don't need to particularly get any modern technology in the head of the club effectively. And this was the moment of inertia I was talking to you about, modern weighting on golf clubs. Really straightforward. The further the weight away from the head of the driver, the more forgiving the driver is. So the more weight you put back here, the more forgiving the driver is. The more weight you put at the front, the less forgiving it is, but the further the ball will go. So when you look at these two, the top one here has got a weight at the back here. It's got about a 14 gram weight. So the reason the weight is there is weight back here is it gives that forgiveness. If you don't hit it from the middle, that weight helps to counterbalance how much that club's going to twist and how much the ball's going to spin. Whereas when you've got a bit of a heavier weight at the front, the club might twist a little bit more, but it will go a long way. So someone who's already very accurate with their driver, but doesn't hit it very far, I'll give them the one with the weight at the front. I'll even give them a heavier weight because those weights are interchangeable. Someone who hits it a long way, but isn't particularly accurate, like me, I want the one with the weight back here, because distance isn't a problem for me. That's fine, but I want a bit more stability of my club head because I tend to miss the fairway too often. So again, that's really where buying off the shelf, if you look, oh, this one's got some fancy weights in it, that looks good. It might be the absolute opposite to what you need. So yeah, important to get that advice when it comes to the design of woods. So shafts. The shaft is the engine of the golf club. If you've got golf clubs that are 20 years old, that is like your car having done 1 million miles, your engine. It's starting to die. The shafts are not strong anymore. They don't flex as much, all those kind of things. And the characteristics of the shafts and the important things are the material, the flex, the weight, the kick point, and the torque. So for those of you who just thought you needed a stiff or a regular, you're wrong. You've got to take all of it into consideration. You don't have to, but I do on your behalf. But I think it's important for you to understand that there's more to it than, oh, I've got stiff shafts in mine and John's got regular in his because I swing it a bit faster, so I need stiff, and he's a bit slower than me, so he needs regular. Another little problem with manufacturers nowadays, just as there are all sorts of different makes and brands, the shafts, all these fancy numbers you see on here, a stiff shaft from one brand is not necessarily the same as a stiff shaft from another brand. They might be steel, they might be stiff. One of them will bend a lot more than the other potentially. So a stiff shaft isn't always a stiff shaft, which is worrying because if you know you need a stiff flex shaft and you turn up and buy your golf club and say to the person in the shop, yeah, I'd like those in a stiff shaft. How do you know it's the same as what you've already got? Unless it's the exact same brand and the exact same shaft, then you know that it works for you. But stiff isn't stiff, regular isn't regular. So what do they mean? Material, there's two materials that we have in golf shafts, graphite or steel. Graphite, much lighter, steel, a little bit heavier. Graphite we tend to see in club speeds that are slower. Steel, we tend to move from mid swing speeds to very fast swing speeds. You don't see any golfers with very fast swing speeds with graphite shafts, but you will see a lot of golfers with very slow swing speeds with steel shafts because they've just had them forever and they haven't been fitted for the right things. They just bought steel ones because they didn't know any different. That's fair enough. But I see a lot of golfers that could gain that extra 10 yards, 15 yards just by having the correct shaft in their club. The flex, so we've got L for ladies, A, otherwise known as senior flex. They don't call it senior flex anymore. Some of them don't even call it L. They just have numbers, 3, 4, 5, and 6 or 7. And then you know which is which based on the higher the number, the more stiff, the lower the number, the more flexible. But old school is ladies, seniors, regular, stiff, and then extra stiff. So they get, from the ladies, they get stiffer as they go. And I've got a few charts that are pretty cool that show you what swing speeds you would need to fit into to have what shafts. Overall weight of the club. If your club is really heavy and you are let's say you struggle to swing very fast, you're going to struggle even more. If you swing the club very fast and your clubs are very light, it's going to be extremely unstable. So for someone like, let's say Rory McIlroy, his shafts are going to be quite heavy because he moves his club at 100 miles an hour with a 6 iron. If you gave him a shaft that was lighter, 1, he'd probably break it because of the speed he swings it, but 2, his ball would just ping all over the place because the flex of the shaft would be all over the place. The kick point, this is really important. One of the most important things is the kick point of the shaft, and you won't know what that is necessarily. All shafts will flex, they will bend. Now, the kick point is, where does the most of that bend occur? So you get a low midpoint shaft where the shaft will flex mainly down at the bottom. You'll get mid kick point shafts and you'll get high kick point shafts. So if you're a golfer that hits the ball too low and you need more spin and you need more height to help you with your distance, you need a low kick point shaft. So you don't just need a regular one, you need a regular one that's a low kick point. Now all of this might start sounding really confusing. You think, oh my goodness, this isn't for you to worry about. This is for me to worry about when you buy your set of golf clubs or when you come for a fitting or whatever it is, to make sure that you've got a club that works for you. And in fact, any fitter, anyone that has the smallest amount of knowledge of selling golf clubs in a fitting environment, even if you're hitting into a screen or at an American Golf, for example, they will know this anyway. So it's not a secret that I have over anyone else. Torque, that's how much the club shaft twists, because believe it or not, the shaft will twist. Graphite shafts will twist a lot more than steel shafts. And really that affects the stability of the shaft. So if you've got a fast swing speed, you don't want it twisting around an awful lot. You want that pretty stable. So the torque can vary. It also gives an awful lot about the feel. When you hit a club, you'll hit 2 different clubs from 2 different manufacturers. You might have borrowed your friend's club and had a hit and gone, oh, that feels nice, or that feels really not very nice. Could well be the torque of the shaft, how much the shaft is twisting. There's an awful lot of force that goes through this little bit of metal when you hit your golf ball. So the torque is quite important, but it's very much, I would say, more about feel. I'm not going to be able to say to you, you need this torque shaft or you need this one, but you're going to be able to say to me, oh, I like the feel of that. I don't quite like the feel of that. If you can't tell the difference, then it doesn't make a big enough difference to you. So it's very much about the feel. So a couple of graphs here just to give you a little bit of information on some swing speeds and what sort of shafts you would need. This is what I'm going to refer to. So driver speed, you can see there, if you've got a low swing speed and a slow tempo, you would need an L flex shaft. We've stopped calling it ladies flex, I have anyway, and even the manufacturers have, because if you're a senior gentleman and you swing your driver less than 70 miles an hour and you've got a relatively slow tempo, and you get a shaft that comes in pink and says ladies on it, it doesn't do much for you. But we've come away from that nowadays. That's very, very old fashioned. That's how the industry obviously was a while ago, because it was just, it kind of fitted the stereotypical makeup of ladies' shafts are a bit more flexible because ladies generally need a bit more speed, and then men's are a bit stiffer, and so on. So yeah, we've stopped calling them that. And then if we go up to a fast tempo with a fast speed, 105 miles an hour plus, with a driver with a fast tempo, you need an extra stiff shaft. It's quite a lot of speed. What's the average golfer's swing speed? Good question, because it's not really an average golfer, but I would say you can see you're somewhere in the middle there between regular and stiff. Most golfers are. Most amateur golfers aren't using extra stiff flex shafts, and most aren't using a really whippy shaft. So normally you would sort of fall somewhere between regular and stiff. But again, this is why we're getting custom fitted, because if you're swinging it less than 70 miles an hour or more than 105, you better have the right shaft in your driver. Irons, similar thing here, same kind of thing. So swing speed and tempo just lets us know what shaft flex you need. And also graphite to steel as well, because someone said to me the other day, oh, I thought I'd need graphite shafts. Well, you have a steel shaft. Might be a lighter steel shaft, might not be a really heavy one, but just because your swing speed isn't really, really, really fast doesn't mean you need graphite shafts to make you swing it faster. So that again might be a little bit of feel. If you're right on the cusp between, say, a flex and an R flex, I might let you try out a graphite and try out a steel and see, one, which performs better, and two, which one you like the feel of. We take into consideration where the golfer's going. If you're an aging golfer, I'm probably going to be more likely to give you graphite, because as the years go on, your swing speed is going to decrease much quicker. Whereas if you're a younger golfer, I might keep you in a steel shaft, because you might have a longer period of time to get out of those clubs where you're okay to be in a steel shaft. So again, that can vary depending on the golfer. And this is a really cool table, because this shows how would we adjust things to get the right distance out of your driver. So you can see the swing speeds vary from 80 miles an hour to 120. So we would start with that. We'd say, what's your swing speed? Okay, your swing speed's 90 miles an hour, for example. Therefore, if we give you the right club, I would expect, if you hit it from the middle, remember, I would expect for us to get 120 to 135 ball speed. I would expect 2200 to 2700 revolutions of backspin, and I would expect a 13 to 16 degree launch angle. If we can get those characteristics with that particular club in your hand, then that's the club for you. For example, if you follow the golf, Bryson DeChambeau, the American player, he's really well known for being a really scientific guy. If you look at the bottom of your driver, it will have a loft on it. Now, most of you will have somewhere between 9 degrees and 12 degrees of loft. Mine's 9.5. That will be, again, to do with your swing speed. So if you've got a slower swing speed, you'll need more loft. Faster swing speed, you need less loft. He uses a 5 degree driver. And to put it into perspective, your putter has 4 degrees on it. So he creates such spin and such speed that he can't have too much loft because the ball goes too high and he loses distance. So they've tested it and tested it and tested it and found that for him, he needs a 5-degree driver. Now that's unheard of, and it isn't what I'm going to be fitting my everyday golfers into. But we use these tables to find, okay, well, what's the optimum? What do we need to change to increase the spin? What launch angle do we need to get the most distance? And with the launch monitor that I use, that gives us that data. So it's invaluable. You can't tell by looking with your eye how far your ball's going. You can tell by the ball flight, and you can watch it go, and the golfer will get some feel that maybe the ball came off much faster on one than the other. You can do that sometimes, but you don't really get the detail. Well, I thought that was really interesting to see those tables there. Okay, so wedges. Wedges are good for two things. And any of you that saw my last webinar, I spoke a little bit about this. Wedges are good for loft, which is this angle we spoke about, and they're good for the bounce angle. Now, the bounce angle, if you don't know, is this angle on the bottom of your club. So you can see the little image here of the golf club sitting on the ground and the leading edge lifting up, and the bounce angle is that angle there. So effectively, when my club sits on the ground, it's this part is the bounce angle. Now, why is that important? Well, if you're a certain golfer, you need a certain bounce angle. So for example, if you sweep the ball off the ground like this, then you're okay with a lower bounce angle. In fact, you wouldn't maybe want too much of a bounce angle, because if you did, you could see how the leading edge might hit the middle of the ball and you thin it a little bit. So if you're a sweepy kind of player, I'm giving you wedges that have got a lower bounce angle. If you're somebody that comes down a bit too steep and you're likely to dig your club into the ground, well, I want to give you a bounce angle that's really rounded, so that when you come down and you want to dig a little bit, the rounded bottom of the club there helps to skim off the turf and not dig into it. So that's really, really key. It will really depend on the type of golf course you play on. So if you come to me and you play at a golf course that gets particularly wet in the winter, then I'm going to give you wedges that have got a lot of bounce on them, because we don't want you digging into wet ground, because you'll just duff all your shots. If you play on a very hard, fast golf course, if you're playing links golf all the time, or your course is on chalk, or it's just genuinely quite well drained all the time, I'm probably not giving you lots of bounce on your wedges. You might have one that has a lot of bounce to use from the sand, or from maybe some wet patches from time to time. But generally you're going to have a relatively neutral or not quite so much bounce. So that is really important. I see golfers chip all the time with wedges that are completely wrong for them, and if they just had the right club in their hand, they'd be okay. But in fact, they're having to change their technique to try and use the club that's not designed for them. Grip size, again, overlooked. Standard clubs off the shelf. I ask people what grips they've got on their clubs. Blue ones. That's kind of sort of answer. But no, are they mid-size? Are they jumbo grips? Are they, again, ladies grips, which are thinner? Not called ladies anymore, but undersized grips, perhaps you could say. So really it's the thickness, and we go on your hand size and your middle finger, your sort of finger length. Because you could have really big palms and really, like I've got quite big palms, I've got quite short fingers. Or you could have small palms and long fingers. A good way to get it is if you grip your golf club with your left hand, if your fingers kind of just comfortably sit on your palm there, then your grips are probably okay. But if your fingers are really, sort of digging in, then your grips are too small. If there's a really big gap there, then your grips are too big. So there's a simple measurement we do, get the right grips on your clubs, very simple. If you've got grips that are too small for you, the club, you can also end up rotating your wrists much more than if you've got clubs that are big. So for example, on a normal set of grips, you'll see there's some tape on the inside, and normally we put one layer of tape on a grip and slide the grip on, and that gives us the standard thickness of the particular rubber of the grip. If you want them thicker, we put extra layers of tape under and we bulk them out. Again, going back to Bryson, who, again, the PGA Tour player, very, very big hands. He has grips on his clubs that they look like tennis grips. They're huge. He does it for the reason that he likes to feel that his hands are very passive through his shot. He doesn't want much rotation, and he feels that with bigger grips, he can achieve it. And smaller grips would cause too much of this to go on for him. But yeah, he's got very, very big grips. Now you might, if you've got really big hands, you don't want really small grips. It's just not very, it's not going to feel very nice to start with, but you're not going to have that control and that comfort as well when you're swinging the golf club. Okay, we're getting there. So what determines the set makeup? So really, the set makeup is the last thing we do. Once we've fitted and we've decided that these are the clubs for you, these are the shafts, these are the heads. The player's ability. If you can create enough club speed, then you can use every club in your bag and create a different distance for every club. So when I hit my 7-iron and when I hit my 6-iron, I know that I've got between 12 and 15 yards between them. Some golfers won't notice any difference between a 6 and a 7-iron. So we probably wouldn't even bother with a 6-iron. We'd go to a 5. So golfers that have got slower swing speeds should have less clubs in their bag and more lofted ones. So it really is kind of, this is probably, apart from the actual specifics about each club and how we can improve your height and distance and trajectory, this bit is the most important part, because you don't want to have clubs in your bag that you're never going to use. I would say 80% of average golfers, and the average golfer is kind of in the 20s handicap, by the way, they won't use all 14 clubs. You'll notice in your club competitions, when it's 3 clubs and a putter day, and you have that 3 clubs and a putter competition, the scores don't change. In fact, sometimes they're even better, because golfers will tend to stick to the clubs that they can use and shy away from the ones they can't. So the player's needs, the player's preference, a lot of it goes into that. Some golfers want a 2-iron in their bag. Some golfers don't want anything longer than a 5-iron. So it's really individual. The player's home course. Do you need to hit the ball high? Do you want actually to keep the ball low? If you're playing links golf, I'm not going to fit you with clubs that are going to hit the ball high and spin a lot, because you don't want height and you don't want spin when you're playing in the wind. If you're playing where you're a little bit more inland and you don't have to worry about that quite so much. If you're playing a wet course and you want the ball to carry and not rely on the roll, all those sorts of things. So there's a lot that goes into it, certainly in my mind, when I'm thinking about what I'm going to give to the golfer. It's not just what we like the look of. And budget, ultimately, you know, let's not shy away from golf can be a really expensive thing. If you go high end with everything, it can be very expensive. So that can play a part as well on what your set makeup is and what you decide to go for. I would say though, with investing in golf clubs nowadays, if you buy a set of golf clubs, if they don't last you 10 years, then something's wrong. People choose to change their golf clubs more regularly because they feel it's an answer to all their problems. They had 40 putts last week, so they get on eBay and buy a new putter. That's fine. But if you think about it as an investment that way, and you think about the cost that you're going to spend and spread it over a relative period of 10 years or so, you know, it's not really costing that much per year. So, you know, it's a long-term investment you're looking at to get out of your clubs, and it should be with the quality that they're built with nowadays anyway. Okay, so we are pretty much bang on the hour mark. I'm conscious that I've gone really quick, but please feel free to go back through this and just fast forward to the bits you want to know a little bit more about. Also, please, if you've got any questions at the end of this, ping me an email and I'll get back to you. If you didn't hear something, if you want more clarity on one thing or another. So I've got a few questions that were sent. Will graphite shafts increase my loft and spin/swing speed? Well, I covered that one. Graphite shafts are lighter, so certain golfers will make them swing it faster. Certain golfers, it will make the ball spin more for them. If I had a graphite shaft 7-iron, it wouldn't make me swing it particularly any faster, but it would make me spin the ball a lot more and be out of control. So there's a point where a certain golfer wouldn't want graphite shafts. So yes is the answer, but it needs to be for the right golfer. I have King Cobra 1 length irons. Do they still need to be custom fitted? So King Cobra brought out, again, our man Bryson DeChambeau, he wanted all his clubs 1 length to keep things simple. He wanted the same setup, the same swing, the same feel, everything, which is fine. And actually, King Cobra have done a brilliant job of making all the clubs, changing the weight of the shafts and changing the weight in the heads so that a 5-iron actually goes the distance it should do, even though it's the length of a 7-iron, because the length of the shaft has a lot to do with how far you can hit the ball. Do they still need to be custom fitted? Yes, because how do you know that their standard 7-iron length is right for you? It's only their standard. So you would still need the right length. You would still need the right lie. You still may need the lofts perhaps adjusted. So yeah, they still need to be custom fitted. Why are iron shafts different lengths? So this is a question that some of you might not know, might not have ever really thought much about, but they are different lengths and have been different lengths because the longer the club, the faster you can swing. Now, as clubs get less lofted, they get longer. So of course your 9-iron is shorter than your 8-iron, is shorter than your 7-iron, and so on. So if you have a very, very flat club and you swing it slowly, you're not going to create the speed to get the ball in the air. So that's why your longer iron, or your flatter face irons, are longer. It helps you generate the speed to create the spin and the speed of the ball to get that height. Because if you swung a pitching wedge at 20 miles an hour, your ball would lift in the air because of the loft. If you swung your 3-iron at 20 miles an hour, your ball probably wouldn't even come off the ground. You need the speed to get the height, and that's why the length helps. Do putters need adjusting? We haven't spoken about putters at all with this. It's not something that I'm going to be doing, but yes, same thing, length. I'd want you to be comfortable standing over the ball, so you're not too long or too short and reaching, or your posture isn't too upright or too over. The putter head is important for the golfer. So a golfer that swings their putter very straight back and straight through on the line would generally want the shaft of their putter to go through the center of the club. So you get some putters where, not this one, I'll just bring a putter out so it makes a bit more sense. So this is a heel shafted putter. A heel shafted putter is designed for someone that swings their putter on an arc. It arcs this way and it arcs that way. Okay, so it doesn't swing on a straight line back and through. If you swing your putter on a straight line back and through, you'd want a putter with the shaft in coming out the middle, and you'd swing it straight back and straight through. So a heel to toe movement is better for an arcing stroke. One in the center is better for a straight back and through. And that's what I would look at for design of putters. Of course, the length and the lie angle of this putter, you know, if you're tall or, sorry, long arms or short arms, not tall or short, doesn't make a difference. Arm length, you don't want your putter sitting like this on the ground. You want to be able to hit from the middle of the face consistently. Your putter needs to be sitting square. Most golfers adjust themselves to the putter rather than adjust the putter to them and buy the right one. Putting's a personal thing anyway. I'm not so sold on custom fitting for putters because I think we find our putting strokes very individually anyway as golfers, and there's not quite so much science behind that as there is a ball that flies in the air. Finally, if a senior buying senior clubs, how much does custom fitting help, and how much more of a premium would you pay compared to online or high street shops? So for I've shortened the question slightly, but one chap asked, if I'm a senior and I just go online and I know I need senior clubs because I'm a senior, so graphite shafts and senior clubs, what more does custom fitting add? Well, hopefully to this point now, you've seen the length, the lie. They might be graphite shafts, but are they the right weight? Some graphite shafts are heavier and lighter than others. You might be a senior, but have you got a slow swing speed necessarily? We don't know. So you're probably quite close to getting the right thing, generally, ballpark, I guess. But you're not going to get the exact right thing for you. And if that's going to be your forever set of golf clubs that you're going to buy and you're going to play your golf out with those ones, I'd want to think that you're getting the exact ones that are going to suit you as you go. A little thing in terms of what a premium you would pay. If I give you an example at the moment, the most that I'm going to do with is probably going to be Cobra. I actually went on American Golf and had a look. Their clubs are retailing exactly what I would sell them at. So if you went online and bought them, it'd be exactly the same as you'd pay of me. And if you were to come to me and say, I want to buy some clubs, can you fit me? And I'm pretty certain I want to buy if I can get fitted for them. Your fitting would be free of charge. So there would be no benefit, or it wouldn't make sense not to do it, because you're not going to save money by buying online or buying from a store. The only time you will is when the product comes to an end and new products due to come out. These big companies just slash the prices down and sell them at a loss. And I will never be able to compete with that. No pro shop or no independent pro will be able to compete with guys that are selling their products at a loss. So they will have so much stock hold that they'll make so much on the previous ones, they can sell them at a loss and still be at a profit overall. I'm not holding stock, so I'm not going to have to worry necessarily about doing that anyway. I'll be more likely to say, yep, that's fine, go and do that. And then when the new product comes in, I can sell that again and I'll be back up to level with what everyone else is selling them at. So really, you're not losing out. You're not gaining anything by buying them online particularly. So just to finish now, just a slight plug, if that's okay with you. What I'm going to be doing going forward, like I say, if you're serious about buying a set of clubs and you want me to help you, then my services are free. I won't charge you for the fitting. We'll have enough time to do whatever you want to do. If you want just a driver, we'll do just a driver. If you want a full set of clubs, I'll put enough time aside that we can fit you a full set of clubs. Because my absolute priority is to make sure that if you are going to buy clubs from me, you get the right ones. And if you continue having lessons from me years to come, a lot of my guys stick around. I'm going to be responsible for your golf clubs if they're not right. So I don't want to be 2 years down the line saying, actually, I think we need to change your clubs again. So yeah, the sessions with me will be free of charge if you're serious about buying a set of clubs. If you just want to get some figures and some numbers, then there is a charge for that. And I'll talk to you about that just in a sec. My brands are Cobra, Yonex, and Orca. Cobra, I've spoken about. Yonex, excellent with ladies and seniors clubs. I would say almost specialize in them. Very good quality. If you're a racket sport player, you'll know the brand Yonex. Very, very big in Asia, not so big over here, but again, ladies and senior stuff, really popular. I'd say a lot of ladies I see have got Yonex golf clubs. And I've got a Yonex demo day coming up on the 10th of July. And there's still a few spaces left on that if you're interested. And then finally, Orca, a brand that you may not have heard of, English brand. They make the softest metal golf clubs. Softest, they use the Japanese forged metal. Mizuno is what I use. They're the second softest. But yeah, Orca make this. So the feel is incredible you get from these clubs. It's very, very nice. So if you're a player that likes a nice feel of the club face, Orca is your brand. I recently went to the headquarters to watch a couple of fittings, and they performed really, really well. One of the fittings, the student actually turned up with a 7-iron that was actually more like a 5-iron should be, so de-lofted. So it was going for him what a 5-iron should go. And the chaps actually gave him their club with about 6 degrees more loft. And you'd have thought the more loft, the shorter you hit it. He hit it 25 yards further with a 7-iron because he had the right loft and the right spin all of a sudden. So these brands that have been de-lofting their clubs over the years to claim that you get more yardage. Well, you only get more yardage if you can handle a 26-degree 7-iron, if you swing it fast enough. If you don't, you're going to hit that shorter. So it's a minefield, and that's why, again, another reason why I want to add this to what I do, genuinely to help people. I can fit your current clubs. So let's say you bought your clubs a year ago. Oh, it's too late. I didn't get custom fitted. What can I do? Well, it's not the end of the world. We can do something. Like I said before, I can adjust the loft and the lies, the angles. If we need to, we can thicken the grips. I can lengthen and shorten. The only thing effectively I can't do, or I could do, but it would be cheaper to buy a new set of clubs, would be to replace the shafts. If you start replacing shafts, they get very expensive. Most golf clubs are a write-off as soon as the shaft is broke. For example, if you buy a driver for £250, if you snap the shaft is going to cost you the same as a new driver. So that's the only thing I probably can't do. But if you're on the limit of, shall I adjust my current ones or shall I buy new ones, looking for a fitting and have a go. And if you don't see any difference, then don't buy any new clubs and we just adjust the ones you've got. So gapping sessions, finally. Gapping sessions is going to be once you've got your golf clubs, once you've been fitted, once you're happy that you've got the correct set for you, how far do you hit them? And this is something we can test on the launch monitor, and I'll give you a report of how far all your clubs go. So you'll have a neat little graph, a neat little table that says your 5-iron goes this far, your 6-iron goes this far, your 7-iron goes this far. And you should see, if you've got the right clubs in your hand, a relatively nice gap between all of your clubs. So that's quite key for golfers, and I'm doing more and more of those as time goes on. Finally, demo days, I touched on it. I've got a couple of demo days coming up. The Cobra demo day is nearly full, actually. In fact, I'm going to have to double up and have some chaps with the fitter, and I'm going to have some guys with my fitting equipment in the studio, depending on what you want to do. It'll depend on who you see, but we're getting really busy with that Cobra day, so that's excellent. That's not till the 15th of August, so we've still got 5 weeks or so, 6 weeks until that one. It's already almost full. I probably could cap it now, but I'm going to leave it if a few more guys want to come in and I can get them in. There's just a little bit of room. And that is it. So unless there's anything else you guys want to ask, let me just have a look and see if there's any messages. Mark had to go. And Nigel, great. Guys, if there's anything you want to know following this, please drop me an email. I'm happy to answer all your questions. And if you do want to, if you do want to book in, if you are interested in any of this kind of stuff, then let me know. Like I say, I'm still waiting on the Cobra stuff, so that's not quite here. A couple of weeks. I've got shafts. I've got graphite shafts in. So if you're a senior golfer or a lady golfer, or you're just a golfer with a slower swing speed, as I was saying before, I can get you started straight away. If you're an adult golfer, sorry, a sort of a mid-range man golfer, then I've got drivers, I've got 3-woods for you as well, and hybrids. But I haven't got any steel shafts. So if you're a man in the middle and you need a steel shaft, I haven't got those just yet, but they will be on the way really soon. You'll certainly hear about it as soon as they come in. So thank you all again. I'll just, I'm gonna log off. So yeah, great. I've actually got one. How much to have your own clubs fitted? It depends on what needs doing, and it will just be on an hourly basis. So an hour will be £65, and that would be enough to do the loft and lies on your clubs. Be aware that not all golf clubs, depending on the quality of the build, I would recommend actually being adjusted. For example, these irons are forged metal, they're very soft. You can bend them really easily, no problem at all, with a reasonable quality set of golf clubs. If you have a set of golf clubs that are sort of off Amazon, and they're maybe not a golf brand, or they're not a high quality, which is fine, by the way, then I wouldn't be suggesting bending them, because if they're not forged and they're cast, then you run the risk of weakening them. And the last thing you want is to weaken your heads and then them break when you hit golf balls. So I would definitely look at your golf clubs and say yes or no. I wouldn't move them, but again, it depends on, I don't know what clubs you've got, but it will depend on the actual clubs in your bag as to whether I can move them or not. And I think that's it. So guys, again, drop me an email if you've got any questions. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope I haven't waffled and gone too quick. I am going to record this. It's been recorded, so I'm going to ping it out once it downloads. So if you want to watch back, feel free. And yeah, any questions, please drop me an email. Okay.
Any news on a demo day for Orca then?
Not yet.
Sounds interesting.
I'm actually going to see those guys. I'm actually, with Orca, I'm taking a student up to their headquarters, because they do some fittings themselves. And I've got a student who was really keen on the actual brand, who's heard of them before, watched some of their YouTube videos, and the owner's quite, he's a golf geek. He's really into fitting, and he is his own brand, and he loves what he does. And I'm actually taking one of my students up to get fitted by him. So it's just a really nice experience for the student. And they've got the whole range and everything there that he can see, and they'll be built by the owner himself. He makes the clubs himself because he's so precise in what he does. He doesn't want anyone else doing them, so he makes hundreds and hundreds of golf sets a week. So a demo day for those, I'm not sure yet. I'm going to probably be looking towards September time, but I'll get these ones in the diary first, and then I'll move on to the Orca ones. I should have some Orca product in my studio within the next month anyway. So I should have some stuff to try.
Cool.
Okay.
Are all three much the same price, or?
They vary. They are similar pricing. It really depends on the shaft you want in the club. Depends on the head design. It's really hard to give an idea of what clubs cost nowadays. It depends, it's such a wide, but if you were to work on the basis of average, 80 to £100 an iron, then I would say that would be about the kind of price. Some are cheaper, some are more expensive. Some are, £60 an iron, some are £140 an iron. It depends, it really depends.
But all three brands are in that price, same price.
Yeah, they are. I mean,
much more expensive than Ochre.
Not really. I mean,
cheaper.
The high-end Cobra stuff is very expensive, but Cobra also have a slight entry level where you can get your a good set of irons for sort of $550, which is pretty reasonable in this day and age. If you're golfing for the next, keeping them for the next 10 years, it's pretty good value. Whereas their high-end iron sets go up to £800-900. So it really does depend on. I would say, in general terms, the higher quality the golfer, and the more you head towards an iron like this where it's bladed and it's forged, the more you pay. Generally, the more game improvement you get, the bigger the cavity, generally the less you pay. I've no idea why. I'm guessing it's the way that these have to be made, because these are forged from one piece of metal, whereas the cavity back ones aren't. They're made by maybe 2 or 3 pieces. So this is a much more expensive process to forge it. I guess that's it really in terms of the pricing. It's quite hard to say. If you look on, you can look on any sites, and like I say, the pricing is pretty well going to be the same as what I'll do, unless there's any particular event on where I'm doing discounts and things like that. But I think I would just say, to the point with pricing of golf clubs, like I say, I would look at it as, if you're playing with these clubs for the next 10 years and you spend £1,000, then £100 a year for a hobby you're going to be doing a lot is probably pretty good value. I don't need to sell that kind of thing to you, but I think it's just a good way to think of it if you're going to, if you're serious about, getting some clubs that are going to last you.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Thanks very much.
Okay.
That's good. Thank you.
Any other questions from anyone? No? Okay, good. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. And
Thanks, Adam. See you
Thanks,
soon.
Adam. Really interesting.
cheers, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Adam.
Bye.